Emily hadn't slept in days. The letter from Henry still haunted her, his words echoing in her mind like a sinister riddle. Josh wasn't who she thought he was. But who was he then? The night outside was cold, but inside the safe house, a different kind of chill settled over her. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Meet me at the old pier. Midnight. Alone. Jay. Could she trust him? After everything, did she even want to? She stared at the screen, heart pounding. One choice could change everything. The past wasn't done with her yet. Emily arrived at the old pier just before midnight. The fog curled over the water like ghostly fingers, swallowing the distant city lights. She checked behind her. No one followed. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, lean. Josh. But something was off. His eyes held a guarded intensity, as if he was hiding something deeper than she'd ever imagined. Why now? She whispered. He glanced around nervously. Because Henry's next move is closer than you think. And I need you to trust me, one last time. Emily swallowed hard. The man she thought she knew had vanished long ago. But the woman she was becoming knew this was just the beginning. Emily crossed her arms, keeping her distance. You faked your death. Disappeared for 10 years. Then came back with secrets. And now you're telling me Henry's still coming? What are you saying, Josh? Josh's jaw clenched. My name, it's not Josh Wright. The words hit like a slap. He reached into his coat and handed her an old, weathered passport. Elias Morgan, born in Montreal, dual citizen, government contractor. What the hell is this? She asked, her voice sharp. I was part of a classified operation that went south. Henry wasn't just a businessman. He was our handler. When I found out what he was really doing, I tried to get out. That's when I met you, and when I knew I couldn't stay. Emily's head spun. The man she married was part of something far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. Then why come back? Because you're still in danger, he said quietly, and because I never stopped loving you. She stepped back. The lies, the betrayal, it was too much. But then her phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo of Ava, tied to a chair. A clock ticking in the corner. A message followed. 1 hour. Or she disappears like he should have. Emily's blood turned to ice. Emily stared at the photo on her phone, her hands trembling. Ava. Bound. Terrified. A digital clock next to her read 58 minutes and 16 seconds and ticking. Josh, no, Elias leaned over. That location, it looks like an old interrogation setup. Henry's sending a message. Emily's voice cracked. We have less than an hour. Josh nodded, scanning the photo. That wall texture, those lights. He's using one of the old black sites. I know where this is. Emily's eyes flared. You knew about black sites, and you're just now saying this. I had to be sure that he's really back in control. He's not supposed to be. He was burned years ago. They took him out. But they didn't, Emily whispered. And now he has my daughter. Josh pulled out a folded map from his coat. There's an old site outside Albany, shut down and buried after a scandal. If he's anywhere, it's there. Emily stared at him. Then let's go. He hesitated. It's not just about saving Ava anymore. If Henry's back, that means the entire operation's still alive. Funded, protected, and very, very hidden. We can't just grab Ava and run. We have to end this. She met his eyes, hard. We end it after we save her. Josh nodded. Then we'll need help. He pulled out a burner phone and dialed. Activate Protocol 7. It's Elias. Tell them the ghost is alive. Josh, Elias, drove like he had the devil on his heels. Emily sat beside him, hands clenched, heart thudding with every mile they put between them and the pier. Who did you call? She asked. Old contacts. People who owe me favors, or want to see Henry burn. But we're not waiting for them. If Ava's got less than an hour, we're going first. And Protocol 7? Emily asked. It's a failsafe. If I'm ever compromised, it sends a ping to 3 hidden databases. Buried intel. Names, ops files. Enough to bring down the whole program. She looked over. And what happens to you? Josh didn't answer. The silence was telling. They turned off the main highway, driving through thick woods and gravel paths until a looming concrete structure emerged from the shadows. Overgrown, rusted, abandoned to the world. Or so it seemed. Josh killed the engine. We go on foot. Emily grabbed the crowbar from under the seat, the same one Ava had once used in their escape. They circled to the back, where Josh found a half-buried steel door behind vines. This used to be a CIA black site, he whispered. We called it Facility Echo. Decommissioned, or that's what they told us. He pried the door open, revealing a stairwell descending into darkness. As they stepped inside, Emily's phone vibrated. A live feed. Ava. Still tied. Still breathing. Then a voice, distorted and cruel, echoed through the old speaker system. Hello again, Emily. Did you really think this was about love? About him? No. It's always been about you. Emily froze. Josh's face drained of color. He knows everything. The sound system crackled, then fell into eerie silence. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Always been about you. Josh pressed forward, flashlight in hand. His knuckles were white on the grip of his pistol. Henry's playing mind games, he muttered. But Emily didn't move. She stared into the dark, memories flooding her, flashbacks that didn't make sense until now. The men in suits who always trailed her in college. The random government survey she filled out once, then never heard back. The blood work request after Ava's birth. Just a genetic anomaly, they said. Josh turned. Emily, her voice was barely audible. I was part of the program too, wasn't I? He hesitated. Yes. A pause. From the beginning. Emily's mind reeled. You didn't just find me by accident. You were assigned to me. I didn't know the truth until after we were married. By then, I was already in too deep, with you, with Ava. That's why I left. To keep you both out of it. She stepped back, fury rising. You used me. I loved you. But Henry, he's doing this because of me. Josh nodded slowly. You were always the control subject, the one whose choices could alter the outcome of the trials. What trials? Behavioral manipulation, emotional conditioning, genetic profiling. Henry's masterpiece was never the agent's, it was watching what happens when someone like you is pushed far enough. Emily's blood ran cold. Ava wasn't just bait. She was leverage. And Emily, she was the experiment. The deeper they moved through the facility, the more Emily's world unraveled. Flickering lights buzzed above as they passed walls lined with observation windows, one-way mirrors, smeared with time and dust. Inside one room, monitors still blinked, tracking movement patterns, biometric data, neural pulse records. Josh checked a nearby terminal. These are recent. Someone's been using this place. Emily leaned in, scanning the screen. Her heart stopped. There in the feed logs. Subject 017, Emily Calloway. Status active. Behavioral threshold, 89%. What the hell does that mean? She asked, her voice rising. Josh stared. Thresholds were predictive models. It means they believed you'd break, emotionally, mentally, at 90%. They're watching to see what pushes you past the line. Emily's hand curled into her fist. So this is entertainment for them? It's more than that. It's replication. If they can control you, they can control anyone. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the corridor. Red lights flashed. They're here, Josh muttered, reaching for his weapon. A steel shutter slammed behind them, sealing off the exit. From ahead came footsteps. 6 no more. Then a voice from a hidden speaker. She wasn't supposed to figure it out this fast, but it makes her so much more interesting. Emily's anger burned white-hot. Not fear. Not helplessness. Resolve. She turned to Josh. Give me the gun. What? I'm not your subject anymore. I'm not their test. And I'm done being saved. Josh looked into her eyes and handed it to her. The weapon felt heavier than Emily expected. She gripped it tight as the footsteps grew louder, measured, deliberate. Soldiers, agents, observers. Josh scanned the walls for a secondary exit. There should be a service tunnel nearby, unless they blocked it. Emily wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on the hallway ahead, and then she saw them. 3 figures emerged from the red haze, faceless in black body armor, visors down, rifles drawn. But behind them came a woman. Tall, blonde, unmistakable. Mara. Emily breathed. Josh froze. No. She's dead. Emily shook her head. She was my best friend. My roommate in college. She disappeared 6 months before I met you. Mara smiled. Correction. I was reassigned. She turned to Emily with a chilling calm. You were never supposed to find out, but the algorithm underestimated your resilience. We knew you'd be pushed, family, fear, grief. But it was love, Emily. Love kept you from collapsing, and that made you valuable. Emily raised the gun. Where's Ava? Mara didn't flinch. She's safe. For now. But she carries your blood, your profile. Henry wants to start the next phase with her. Josh lunged forward, but the soldiers raised their rifles. Emily didn't blink. Let her go. You can't win this. Mara said. You were never meant to survive, but you can choose your life or hers. Emily smiled darkly. You forgot one thing. Mara tilted her head. What's that? Emily pulled the trigger. The glass above shattered. The light behind Mara exploded in sparks. Chaos erupted. Josh tackled one soldier. Emily ran for the door behind Mara as bullets tore through metal and concrete, and from somewhere inside the chaos came a child's scream. Ava. Emily sprinted down the corridor, heart pounding louder than the alarms. She followed Ava's scream, echoing faintly between slamming steel doors and glitching speakers. Josh's voice yelled behind her, but she didn't stop. Not again. She reached a hallway lined with glass doors, each one revealing sterile rooms like hospital nurseries. One of them flickered, and inside, Ava, strapped to a medical chair, awake, eyes wide. Emily slammed the access panel. Ava, I'm here. The door didn't budge. Then the screen beside it lit up with a cold blue glow. A voice followed. Welcome, Subject 017. You've reached the endpoint. Then a door hissed open behind her. She turned, and there he was. Henry, older, gaunt, but the same cold eyes. The man who engineered every step of her descent. Emily, he said softly, you've exceeded every prediction. She raised the gun. Henry smiled. Go ahead. But the moment you do, the girl's vitals flatline. Emily's hand shook. What do you want? I want to thank you, he said. You proved my theory. That stress, trauma, maternal instinct, they can override even the deepest conditioning. You were supposed to break. Instead, you evolved. He stepped forward, nodding toward Ava. She's the next stage, the hybrid of resilience and control. Emily's eyes narrowed. You said replication. What does that mean? Henry tapped the glass. The lights inside Ava's room dimmed, then rose again to reveal something behind her. Another child. Identical. Same face. Same hair. Same terrified eyes. Emily's mouth went dry. What is this? Cloning, Henry said. Replication. We copied Ava's DNA, your DNA, and tested behavioral imprinting. But they were missing the core spark, the emotion. He looked at her with something like reverence. Until you proved it could be taught. Emily stepped back. The room was full of them. Children, all identical to Ava. Some crying, some motionless. She turned, horrified. You're making weapons. No, Henry whispered. I'm creating survivors. Josh appeared behind her, bloodied, out of breath. Emily, it's wired. The whole place. Protocol 7 triggered the auto-purge. We've got 10 minutes max. Henry's voice turned desperate. You can't leave them. They're yours, Emily. Not just Ava. All of them are you. Emily looked into the room one last time and made her choice. The countdown had started. 9 minutes. Emily stood frozen, the full weight of the truth pressing down on her. The experiments, the replications, the years of being manipulated like a variable in someone else's equation. Ava's eyes locked with hers through the glass. Real, innocent, terrified. Josh gripped her arm. We have to move. Now. Henry's voice cracked through the intercom again. You don't understand. Those children carry your potential. Your mind. Your will. You could lead them. Emily slowly turned toward the control panel. You want control, she whispered. Then she shot the panel. The glass hissed. Emergency fail-safes kicked in. Ava's door slid open. Emily ran in, unstrapped her daughter, and wrapped her in her arms. I've got you, baby. I'm so sorry. Ava clung to her. Mommy, I dreamed of you. 8 minutes. Josh opened a back maintenance tunnel. We've got one shot to the roof. I've got a signal for evac. As they ran, Ava looked up. Mommy, what about the other girls? Emily hesitated. They're like me, Ava said. I felt them dreaming too. Behind them, explosions rocked the lower levels. Flames licked the hallway. Steel warped. 7 minutes. At the stairwell, Emily stopped cold. There, at the base of the steps, stood one of the clones, not restrained, not afraid. The girl looked up, calm. Older than Ava. 6, maybe 7. Don't leave us, she said softly. Josh aimed his gun. Emily don't. Emily stepped forward and knelt. What's your name? The girl blinked. They didn't give us names. Just numbers. Emily looked into eyes that mirrored her daughter's her own. Then she pulled Ava closer. Then you're not numbers anymore. 6 minutes. They moved quickly. Emily, Josh, Ava, and the girl. Smoke filled the vents as the facility began to collapse behind them. On the roof, the extraction chopper was already hovering. A spotlight cut through the dark. Emily turned, shielding Ava's eyes, as flames consumed the structure below. She'd never know how many were lost, but she knew at least one made it out, and that meant Hope did too. Epilogue. 3 years later. A quiet house in Oregon. Sunlight spills across a porch where 3 girls draw with chalk. Ava and 2 others, nearly indistinguishable. Inside, Emily stands at the window, watching them with a bittersweet smile. Josh approaches with coffee. You think they'll ever remember? Emily shakes her head. They already do. But now they get to choose who they become. Josh nods. And what about you? She sips her drink. I'm not a subject anymore. She turns, revealing a wall of notes, maps, and faces. I'm a hunter now. And Henry? He's next. The end. If this story left your heart racing and your mind reeling, what would you have done in Emily's place? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more stories that'll keep you questioning everything.